Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ian McKechnie. I'd like to welcome you to our Servitization Meets Sustainable Supply Chain webinar this morning. We will be starting more or less bang on 11 o'clock. We're just waiting for a few delegates to join us, and then we will kick off. Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this morning on Servitization Meets Sustainable Supply Chains. These are really fantastic and topical messages that we're experiencing at the moment when we're working with manufacturing and technology firms. We'll go through and explain a little bit more as we go through the webinar about servitization, but it's also about looking at how we can be more sustainable in what we produce and use, and also how does that then have a knock-on effect to supply chains, and how can servitization enable a better business model to allow you to exploit both of these in a more positive light. So let me take you through just very briefly our schedule for today. We will be talking to Dr. Denise Taylor from Wild Connections. We've also got Mark Wood from APC and Paula Cresswell from the Advanced Services Group. And we're really going to talk about the context of supply chains, why the supply chains can be improved, and what is servitization, and what kind of business model is appropriate for a company. So let me just introduce the speakers we've got today. We've got a really good lineup. We've got Paula Cresswell as Partnership Development and Operations Manager from the Advanced Services Group. It's a specialist group looking after the topic of servitization, but through a research lens. We've got Dr. Denise Taylor, who's Managing Director of Wild Connections, and Denise is a sustainability practitioner, an environmental educator, and a specialist in circular economy, net zero, and business strategy. And I'm delighted that Denise's PhD was in environmental education, and we'll share more of that as we go through the session. We've got Mark as Managing Director of Alliance Procurement Solutions, and they provide services on strategy development and supplier relationship development along supply chains. And even more pleasing is Mark has spent 20 or so years in Rolls-Royce in a variety of senior roles, and he's a specialist in supporting manufacturing businesses to procure smarter. So we've got a range of experiences around about environmental, around supply chain, but also working in large and small organizations. So a little bit before I start about the Advanced Services Group, we are a specialist group of academics, business specialists, and support specialists. We're about 30 strong, working out of the Aston Business School. And Professor Tim Baines is our Executive Director. Tim is the #1 academic in the world for the term servitization and advanced services. And in essence, what that means is adding services to support a product in use. And we have a very successful team. We've been established as a group for the last 10 years. Tim has been a researcher in this space for the last 20 or so, and that allows us to focus on these two topics at a very niche level. We provide education, training, and research to global networks, and the Advanced Services Group that Paula represents is an entity where we create and craft intellectual property and share that with industry. So why should it matter to manufacturers, the topic of servitization and advanced services? And this graph, I think, depicts it very well. We've seen the period 1995 to 2020, the decline in gross domestic product value in manufacturing, but a comparable increase in the value of GDP in UK services. So there's a significant change in the way that societies operate, the way that we're a consumption-based society. And the research that comes from our group deals with these challenges and helps firms actually take advantage of the opportunity. One of the things that we share with companies is our services staircase. And I'd really like just to to consider this in light of today's presentation, what we do with firms is we take them from the bottom, where they may provide just a base service, into a more intermediate service, and finally up into these more advanced services where we're focusing much more on the outcome. And for today's session, the reason that we've got Denise and Mark and Paula together is that we see delivering sustainable supply chains as a kind of three-legged activity. And within each of these domains, there are particular areas why they should be relevant to businesses. So I will pass on now to Denise, but before doing so, I thought I'd just share this one slide about the elephant in the room. You may hear a lot about the topic of servitization, but in essence, what people are struggling with is how to actually take that forward. And that's something that we can help with through the research group. We'll talk a bit more about blueprints and Paula's session. And now what I'll do is I will hand you over to Denise to talk you through the sustainability element. Over to you, Denise.
Thank you, Ian. Right, just make sure that I'm controlling this. It's not advancing.
Try the arrows at the bottom, Denise.
Yeah, that's what I'm pressing, each of them. Says I'm controlling. There we go. Oops. Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. Sorry about that slight technical hitch there. I'm Denise Taylor, and I'm going to talk to you today about sustainability and setting the scene for the two presentations that follow on supply chain and servitization, looking at business models. I'm founder of Wild Connections. We're a consultancy, sustainability consultancy practice, and we help companies, large and small, corporates and SMEs, in developing and implementing their sustainability strategies. Just a brief introduction to what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to have a look at the bigger picture of what sustainability is. I'm going to take a look at some of the practical actions that you can take, and then just talk very briefly about how Wild can help. So what is sustainability? There are a number of definitions when you look at that and do a Google search, but basically, essentially what it boils down to, as well as these two definitions, is how to sustain life. Sustainability is about sustaining life. And I think this is missing a lot in the discussions around sustainability and what that actually means. And currently we have tunnel vision. We're talking a lot about net zero, we're talking about decarbonisation, we're talking about climate change, and that is just one part of what we need to be focusing on. And these are all great, of course, and they're part of the bigger picture, but we do need to look at this holistically. And in this very short presentation, I've only got 15 minutes to give you a whistle-stop tour. I'll look at some of those broader contexts of sustainability and how this is relevant to supply chains and servitizations. And looking at the threats as well as some of the opportunities. So first of all, considering the bigger picture, I think we need to sometimes take a step back, because a lot of the conversation is around net zero, and that's situated in this holistic approach. And basically we're all sat within this sphere of the 9 planetary boundaries that basically our whole life system relies on. So this graphic clearly shows that. And at the moment, human activity is pushing us to breaching some of those boundaries and threatening humanity as we currently stand. So there's all sorts of different models around this. Another model to take a look at is donut economics. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into that today. And I also don't have the luxury today of unpacking some of these boundaries. But what I suggest you do, if you are interested in looking at this in a little more detail, which I strongly advocate, is take a look at the book that was published last year by Johan Rockström and Owen Gaffney called Breaking Boundaries. That gives you a lot more information and puts it into context. And there's also a documentary on Netflix by the same name. What I would like to focus down on, because this has real impact on business, is the global megatrends that are woven in through these planetary boundaries. And again, there are several models for this. There's lots of different megatrends going on, COVID being one of them that hit us globally over the last 2 years. But PricewaterhouseCoopers distilled these megatrends down to 5 key ones, which is rapid urbanization. Human populations are continuing to rise. We all know this. This is leading to increasing urbanization, although COVID did see some people heading to the country. Towns and cities require a lot of resource. We have to build and maintain complex infrastructures. They've not been traditionally built using sustainable principles. We've got to ship in goods and services. There's a lot of energy consumption. We have to heat and we have to cool cities. And all of this urbanization puts increasing pressure on the planet's resources when you look at what it takes to maintain a city or a town. There's a lot of attention now also on creating smart cities and adopting circular economy principles, and we're shifting towards sustainability in terms of building practices. So there's lots of opportunities as well for business. It's not all doom and gloom. Climate change and resource scarcity, we're all seeing the impacts of that at the moment, hitting our current lifestyles. That's only going to increase as temperatures rise, global warming increases. We're seeing failing crops already, so that's affecting food production. That also affects the supply chains, which Mark will talk about. And I think Paul is going to touch on some of that from the servitization point of view. Rare earth minerals are ubiquitous in all our technology. That's becoming more scarce as we use more of them. And we're already seeing the impact of the disruption in the production and supply of semiconductors. Shifts in global economic power are also affecting businesses. We've got geopolitical influences, which we're all seeing at the moment, hard and soft power constantly shifting. We're living in an unstable and insecure world, and that directly affects us all and our businesses. We've got demographic and social change. People are living longer. We've got an aging population that requires greater resources to maintain health and well-being. And this also has an economic impact. Again, also opportunities there. Servitization Live last year went into some depth on the opportunities around servitization in supporting that aging population. We've got technological breakthroughs. It's not all doom and gloom. There are some positive happenings amongst all of this. So we're seeing technology being applied and used in lots and lots of different ways. We've got automation, we've got artificial intelligence, data mining and analytics, software engineering. All of these give us the means to develop solutions for reducing our carbon emissions, recycling materials, cleaning our lands and oceans. The possibilities are endless, and then you can take that also into product design and manufacture and designing things for the good, for the better of everybody. What we're also seeing within manufacturing and technology and on that in those sectors is pressure from all sides, from the top down. We're seeing it right across the board. I'm seeing more and more of our clients being asked to adhere to supply chain codes of conduct. And again, Mark will probably touch on that a little bit more. They're being asked to put sustainability strategies in place and being asked to align their values with their customers. And that's being driven right down the supply chains. We're seeing increasing compliance and legislation, and the race to net zero is only going to mean that's going to increase more. So if you don't already have the systems, policies and processes in place to handle this, then that's going to negatively impact on your business down the line. You may already be seeing that. On the converse side of that, there are some positives if you you get everything in order now, get your house in order, make sure you're compliant, all your legislation is in place, and doing all of this sustainability strategic work. Supply chain disruptions hit every business and have done, particularly in this last couple of years. Shortage of raw materials and components. I've already mentioned silicon chips. This is all having a knock-on effect, from being able to electrify your fleet to getting computer equipment in, COVID, extreme weather events, container ships being stuck in canals. All of this Mark will explore a little bit more, leads to longer lead times, etc., and also all has an impact on your business. Stakeholder engagement is another pressure we're seeing. That's becoming increasingly important as consumers want companies to be doing the right thing. So you've got the consumers and you've got your customers all pushing for businesses to do the right thing and reduce their emissions, be sustainable, be ethical, be responsible employers. Employees want to work for companies with strong core values and ethics, and customers want their suppliers to align with their own values. It's not advancing. Right. So there are business benefits as well. A detailed meta-analysis on 200 different sources, not just companies, but sources, conducted by Oxford University and Arabesque partners, found that there is conclusive correlation between sustainable business practice and profitability. They saw that 90% lowered their cost of capital, 88% improved operational performance, which obviously has a knock-on effect with profitability, and 80% saw positive influence on share performance. And this is not surprising when you look at the process of what becoming a sustainable business means, an ethical and responsible business. Being compliant means that you look at your policies and processes more closely. Setting your carbon emissions targets means you will review all your operations to find carbon savings, but this also means cost savings throughout your business. Adopting different business models means looking at innovative ways of doing things, from product design to servitization, adopting circular economies, and I'm sure Paula will talk some more about those business models that you can look at. Attracting and retaining the right talent means you have better performance and you can deliver better customer service. And paying attention to your governance, all this is part of your sustainability strategy, means you will have a well-run business. And all of this provides you with resilience to change, greater profitability, and being able to enhance your reputation for the longer prosperity for your company. So let's have a look at some practical steps you can take. This staircase is just a brief overview of taking a look at where you are now. There's very little doubt that we need to take action now. Every business needs to take some kind of action. Everybody on a personal level needs to take some kind of action. Industry is one of the biggest contributors to the greenhouse gas emissions, but we can all do something to address the problem. So hopefully you'll be somewhere in the middle of all this. Most businesses that we're seeing at the moment and the conversations we're having is that they're between that compliance and the integrated strategy. And there are some leaders heading for that purpose-led business. You'll see more and more of those appearing. And that's what we're striving for, is becoming purpose-led, more positive, not just about being less bad, but actually about doing the greater good.
That's really useful, Denise. Perhaps we can pick up on that in the Q&A to find out where some companies are.
Yes, yeah, that would be really useful actually, and putting that in the chat, and we can talk about that later, because it would be interesting to see where companies in the audience are on their journey as well. So just moving on to some of the other practical approaches you can take. This is a business model that we developed at Wild. I wanted to put a human-centric approach to this, so it's largely a a human shape, with the purpose being at the head and the values at the heart. So I've just outlined some key steps that we help companies to go through as part of our 4-step process: assess, develop, implement, and communicate. We need bold leadership and good governance. These are critical to the success of a sustainability strategy. We need leaders who can take the action and who can make things happen. One of the most well-known of these is Paul Polman. Some of you may have heard of him. He was the former CEO of Unilever, and that's a business that's had massive global reach, multiple brands and divisions. Paul co-authored a book which was published recently called Net Positive. Worth having a read of that if you're on your own journey towards sustainability. But sustainability isn't a new thing. In 1886, Robert Bosch set up a workshop for precision mechanics and electrical engineers in Stuttgart. And that company was based on his strong values and ethics, and they permeate the business today. Right from the outset, Bosch wanted his social and environmental values to be his legacy, and that continues. The company now employs 401,000 associates. They don't call them employees, they call them associates. And they had sales of almost 80 billion euros in 2021. But throughout the whole business, they've got that ethical corporate social responsibility running throughout it. With right visions and values, creating a purpose-led sustainability strategy will become easier to articulate. Establishing your baseline position, one of the basic things you can do. It's an easy action to take, so do it now if you haven't already done so. Look at embedding innovation into your processes. You can do that through lots of different ways, different business models, adopting circular economy, looking at your product design, and above all, take decisive action. We need decisive and appropriate action, and we need it now. And through all of that, you need to communicate effectively with your stakeholders, all of your stakeholders. Just to help you with the frameworks for this, we help companies with their sustainability strategies, but there are lots of tools and models out there that can help you along the way. One of the most recognised frameworks is the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I will drop some links in the chat later on towards the end of this session, but if you take a look at the SDG Compass, which is quite easy to find, it's quite a lengthy document, but takes you through some of the processes in a guided way, and the UN principles will help with enhancing that Sustainable Development Goals, will help with enhancing your reputation. So do take a look at those and various other models that you can perhaps use to help you with your strategy development. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because Mark covers some of this in his presentation as well. We work quite closely together, but you will get the slides later. And I just wanted to put this up there as a model. And I know Aston Advanced Services Group also use these models to inform what they're doing. So just take a look at that later. It's just reinforcing what I've said about the opportunities that are available for businesses. Whistle-stop tour, as I said, so sorry we're packing a lot in. So how can Wild help you? We're a consultancy. We do have the learning side of things as well, but our consultancy approach to support businesses large and small is that 4-step approach through assess, develop, implement and communicate. In the assess part, we can do your carbon calculations. We have sustainability impact assessment tools. We run discovery sessions, and we do a lot of creative work as well with you to help you develop your strategies, and then looking at your roadmaps and how you can implement them and put them in place. Do talk to me later about that. We've also got a 6-week program. We're going to be running this again in March. We limit it to 12 places on that. So if you want some more information, you will get the slides, just follow the link, or if you want to talk to me later, then please do. So I'll be happy to have a conversation. These are my contact details. I'm running slightly over on time. You will get the slides, so just please pick up on these later. Either email me if you want some more information, or just connect with me on LinkedIn to carry on our conversations. And I'll also put in the chat later a link to the sustainability strategy group that we've got on LinkedIn. That's becoming quite a proactive group, so it would be great if you could come and join us on that as well. I'm now going to hand over to Mark, and he will talk to you about sustainable supply chains.
Thank you very much, Denise.
Okay, thank you, Denise. So good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Wood. I'm the Managing Director of Alliance Procurement Solutions. I suppose just a quick bit of a background about me. As I hinted at earlier on, I had 20 years at Rolls-Royce, and in very simple terms, I went from barrow boy to managing £100 million worth of spend across the whole company globally. Experience of shop floor control, MRP control, as well as buying, and latterly sort of global commodity manager, and all very much manufacturing focused as well, within buying machines, machine tools, services, and manufacturing consumables as well. So we've got great experience in terms of the impact and understanding the impact of sourcing decisions on the success of manufacturing operations. So set up APS 5-6 years ago now, and when we working with clients, a couple of key challenges really come to fruition. I think the last couple of years have really brought some of these challenges that a lot of companies are facing right to the front of their mind. Currently, rising costs, everybody knows about utility and sort of inflation, supply chain risk, COVID, and the disruptions that everybody has faced with not getting parts on time, some companies disappearing altogether, leaving a big hole in their supply chains. Productivity, that can be both back office as well as the shop floor as well. There's a huge amount of opportunity to improve efficiencies in the back office as well as on the shop floor. Supply performance, cost, quality, delivery, the usual key metrics that people can't look to utilise when working with suppliers. I would guess that most people have got some suppliers or a lot of suppliers that are underperforming, and that impacts on their own business performance. And sustainability is becoming ever more critical, especially when you consider Scope 3 emissions, which is effectively everything outside of your business within your supply chains. And I'll touch on that a bit later on. And of course, people sometimes know about all those things, but they haven't necessarily got the right amount of resource or the capability to make the changes that are required. So what do we do? Effectively, it's resetting your thinking about procurement and supply chain management. I'm not going to sort of tell you what reset means. You can read that for yourself, but we deliver 4 key solutions to help people with that. Our own digital technology, which is business intelligence, which is taking anything from a spreadsheet to connecting to data live, building dashboards and giving you the insights to understand your business better than you ever have done before. And that really provides a solid platform to making any strategic changes you might want to take in your business going forward. We provide the natural, usual consultancy bit, but also, as I alluded to, in terms of people, the lack of resource means it's very difficult to get from A to B. So I like to say we just roll our sleeves up and we get our hands dirty, and we provide that support to help people get from A to B quicker. And naturally, as we're doing that, it has to be self-sufficient and self-sustaining for our clients. So it's about developing and building people's capability and support and mentoring and coaching them as we go through as well. And we do that through a 4E process: evaluate where are you today, what are the opportunities, establish a plan going forward, execute against that plan, and then the continuous involvement of that to continuously improve. Ultimate to deliver profitability, sustainability, and people. So what I'll cover through with this today, it's really about what is sustainable procurement, what is it, how is procurement evolving, Why should you do it actually as well? And then how you might want to consider how you can embed that within your organisation. Hopefully that comes through quite nicely. But in simple terms for me, sustainable procurement is the bit that binds each stage and each tier of the supply chain together. So from an OEM out to tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 3s and beyond, everybody has to have the right expectations of each other. So if you think about all the good things that Denise has spoken about in terms of sustainability, both in terms of environmental, social and governance, it's about adopting and expecting the right behaviours and the right processes and attitudes of everybody in that value chain. And it goes beyond from quality, price, lead time. It's about really knowing who it is that you're buying from and how do they protect the brand of yourself and your customers as well. And ultimately, to be able to do that, which just onto a bit of circular economy, which I'll come on to in a minute, it's about that service and the support that you get from your suppliers to unlock those hidden opportunities. Okay, so supply chains, traditionally things have been very linear, but with the rise now of circular supply chains and what that can mean, there's whole different business models that come across with all of that. So it's about identifying the right materials that can be used. I do have a slight concern with everybody getting very excited with regards to batteries, battery powered cars, for example, being the ultimate solution. But if you think back to what Denise was talking about, it's using some very rare materials that there's only a finite amount of resource available for. So we can't keep doing that because we're just going to deplete those resources. So how do we develop those business models that say, how do we reuse, repurpose and restructure those batteries when they get to the end of life? But the key ingredient, whether it's a linear supply chain or whether it's a circular supply chain, every single step in that process requires some form of procurement for somebody to buy something from each other and to support each other on that journey. So ultimately, it comes down to having, again, the right expectations of each other and how we can deliver a sustainable business. Touched on this a little bit previously, but actually the key driver at the minute for a lot of people, which is getting a lot of focus, and understandably so, but without detracting away from the social and governance part of sustainability, is your Scope 3 emissions. Putting it quite simply, on average, your Scope 3 emissions, which is everything within your supply chain, basically accounts for 80% of your carbon footprint. So when people are starting to ask you about, well, what is your carbon footprint, you'll probably be able to do scopes 1 and 2 pretty quickly and pretty easily, but will only cover 20% of your total footprint. So how do you understand, measure, monitor and improve your Scope 3 emissions is the key challenge that people will have. If you couple that then in terms of, well, what is your spend is in your supply chain is probably 70% of your revenues, your supply chain starts to become a really critical factor of the success of your business. Now, 80% is an average. I was at some events just recently. Network Rail shared that their Scope 3 emissions is actually 97%. So they are talking about asking their suppliers and their supply chain to help them on their journey to sustainability. And the key reason that because their supply chain is the key single biggest factor. So one of the key successes I've had in the past, and which is the core to the values that I have within APS, is this isn't about banging the table and demanding more from people. It's about collaboration. So it's bringing people together, influencing stakeholders across different silos and within your supply chain and your customers to work together to deliver the improvements that your business requires. And some of the key stats that come around from this, from a cost saving point of view, from pure pounds, shillings and pence, you can look at a 9 to 16% improvement. Some areas it could be more. We've delivered over in excess of 30 and 50% for some clients. But you get the triple P benefit of profit, people and planet, which is obviously fantastic. Differentiating yourself and demonstrating that you are in control of your supply chain and your sustainability credentials is actually, as long as you're not greenwashing it, which is the bit that really concerns me, is that you're differentiating your brand that's going to enable growth for your business as well. So if you can reduce costs and grow the business at the same time, then you're on a good journey to succeed. And Denise touched on this as well. It's about millennials, about their expectations. They probably interview you more than what you interview them about who you are and what you're all about, and do you have strong sustainability credentials yourself. But if you get those right, collaborative, servitized supply chains in place with your suppliers, you are going to see an improvement in quality, cost and delivery metrics, reduce your supply chain disruptions. And the key within a lot of this is what we often find when we're working with clients. It's about untapping and unlocking the hidden potential within your suppliers that can help you improve your productivity, material selection, technology inputs. It's about working collaboratively across your supply chain to deliver those improvements. So they're the key benefits of probably why you would want to consider doing it. So this comes down to actually, where are you now? What is your vision for procurement and supply chain management? A lot of organisations have strong focus on their sales strategies, their marketing strategies, their operations strategies, HR strategies, all those great things, but very few people have a clear vision for their supply chain, which, when it's 70% of your revenues and 80% of your carbon footprint, is probably a massive hole in a lot of people's organisation and their strategic thinking. So the key core bit, again, this touches back to Denise, which is why we work so closely with each other and our values are very much aligned, but it's actually about doing that deep level of due diligence. This isn't just about code of conduct and sort of thou shalt follow. This is actually about really understanding your suppliers better than you ever have done before. I'll touch on this on the slide later on, but actually one of the key bits about this is actually looking at your suppliers. Are they using slave labour? So if you've got suppliers in the Far East, for example, are they open to anti-bribery? Are they open to bribes, corruption? Are they using slave labour? Are you potentially sponsoring state genocide? Are there environmental policies and processes exactly the same expectations of what we have as an organisation? Cybersecurity. Are they tapping into your systems and unlocking all your hidden secrets? All of these are critical factors that could expose you as an organisation. And if you don't know and you're found to be having slave labour within your supply chain, you are complicit in that. Not knowing it, not an excuse.
Yeah, Mark, can I just interject just 2 seconds?
Yeah.
This is such a critical slide. Is there anything you can tell us about how procurement, perhaps as a function, is evolving?
Yeah, I think for me, I hate procurement, which sounds a bit daft because I work in it, but it does a really good job at talking to itself, and it was always created to be the valued business partner for organisations going forward. I think because of what's happened over the last couple of years, it now has the best opportunity to be that valued business partner to an organisation, because it can really influence the success of an organisation going forward. Because people now not understand about cost pressures from their supply chain, the risks within their supply chains, sustainability. All of those things are in procurement's hands. So I think as we transition forward now into sort of the new world, whatever that's supposed to mean, I think procurement has a real opportunity to put itself at the centre of the success of that.
Well, thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. So last couple of slides. So how do you buy your goods today? Are you transactional? Do you just keep working with the same people because they've always done a great job? There's nothing wrong with that, but how well do you really know those suppliers? Or you're going to work forward with a more strategic mindset with sustainability at the core of everything that you do, taking the brand and your values and everything you've got within that and the expectations of your customers and flowing that down into your supply chain. Now, there's a framework, there's a standard called ISO 20400, which is for sustainable procurement. It's not a certification standard, it's a sort of guidance standard. which we help our clients implement. And it starts from the top, 4 key bits: what are the fundamentals, your policies and strategies, how do you then enable that and flow that through, and then the processes that you embed within the organization to bring that through. And when we talk about supply chain, don't think about just your normal goods that you use in manufacturing. If you're buying a pen, you need a supply chain. Your papers, your IT equipment, if you're using recruitment companies, you've got some spend there with those recruitment companies to bring people into the organization. So anything that you bring into your company is related to a supply chain of some sort. So the banner, the scope of sort of view is everything really. So all in all, what is your procurement strategy? Who's going to own that within your business? And I'll couple it back to 70% of your revenues are likely to be spent in the supply chain, and 80% of your carbon footprint is going to be in your supply chain. So how are you going to manage that? And I think relating back to what Ian said, I think the key challenge here is for procurement not to be seen as that overhead burden, but a key enabler to deliver value and growth into an organisation and underpin strategies. So how can we help? I spoke earlier on about our 4E process: evaluate, establish, execute, and evolve. If you're at the start of that journey, within your journey, thinking about how you need to do something, then we can offer a free bit of evaluation in terms of where you're at to help you establish where you might be. Use some data with us, business intelligence, look at your procurement and spend data or any other business data you might want to look at, and help you map a way forward. And we'd be delighted to talk to you about that. Same as Denise, I've got some bits here in terms of our webpage, contact details, etc. I'll put those into the chat function, recognising the time now, and we'll move on. Okay, thank you. I'll now hand over to Paula, who is going to talk to you about servitization and business models.
Many thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mark. Let me just see if it's all working. Fantastic.
There you go.
Thanks, Mark. And thanks very much, Denise, as well. It's been really interesting for us sharing the development of today and starting to understand in detail some of the issues that are being brought up both by Denise and Mark. And on reflection, there are a number of points that have really stuck with me in terms of themes, and some recurring words that I keep hearing. We keep hearing things about knowing your suppliers, don't we? And that shift more towards that collaborative relationship and having influence. Also, that move away from the transactional. Very important, I think, and most businesses are already looking at this in terms of their overall long-term strategy. But over and over again, we're hearing values, aren't we? Values-led, value propositions, stakeholders, human-centric, people innovation. It's interesting, isn't it, how we'd all been careering towards digital communications and technology-based IoT, and here we are on a Wednesday morning talking about people and how all of that works. And I'm talking about that because it's actually very relevant to what we do within Servitization, which is what I'm going to talk to you about at the moment. And I'm also going to talk to you about why that business model might be useful for you and why it's particularly useful for the manufacturing industry. And put within the context of this initial graphic that we showed at the very beginning, which is what we're proposing as being the key elements to helping you to deliver that sustainable supply chain. If you're going to make sure that you have that governance and that leadership in place, that bold governance, bold leadership that Denise was talking about, if you're going to make sure you've got that underpinning strategy and plan and a framework for your procurement, it all needs to be within a wider business model, doesn't it? And I was fortunate enough to spend a few hours last week in the evening with a bunch of manufacturers, and was just struck, to be speaking to people face to face, but also again to remember just how innovative and how creative manufacturers in particular can be. And you need to be when you're bringing all of these things together, don't you? There's a lot in there that we've been through this morning, and we've just skimmed the surface. And what we say ASG is there's an opportunity there for you to consider the whole under a single business model, and a business model that'll enable you to have that resilience, that longer term resilience as a business, for your business, for your customers and for your suppliers, whilst also adding value to what you do, so that you're looking to secure that longer term future. So what is servitization? So I know that some people are more familiar with these terms, and Ian gave us a brief outline earlier on, but let me just put it in very simple terms. Servitization is an American coined phrase, first of all, which gives it the Z, and it's a process that businesses go through that enables them to focus their business on services. And here we're talking about the capability of their product. So not about that transactional relationship of here's an item, thanks for the money. It's looking much higher at that, at what is it ultimately, what capability is my product providing for you? And the very simplest example I can give you of that is heating as a service. So it's not about providing, buying a boiler, it's about guaranteeing heat. That's the right temperature at the right timing. So that gives you, that's one of the biggest examples, but obviously there's a whole bunch of others for smaller businesses. And essentially the services journey, the services landscape can be summed up into three. First of all, there's base services, where the outcome is just about the provision of the product. We manufacture the product, we sell you the product, and that's the end of the relationship. So very transactional. Intermediate services is where most businesses are these days, where you're providing a little bit more of that. You're selling the product and you might be focusing then on the condition of that product. So you might be offering a servicing option, or you might be providing spare parts, or you might check in once a year just to see how things are going. And then finally, there's that advanced service offering, which is about the capability of the product. So what is it your product is fundamentally delivering for your customers? And it's within that broader landscape, I'd like to talk you through the business model and what that might mean to you in terms of supporting that sustainable supply chain. So what is it about that services business model that's going to enable you to do that? Well, we know that there are lots of other businesses doing this for a start. We know that businesses, large and small, across the world are thinking very seriously about how they sell, how they talk about, how they contract, how they manage their businesses around the provision of services. And as I say, so this is just a snapshot of some of the businesses that we've worked with over the last 5 years, large and small. So this isn't something that's just useful for larger businesses. This is a smaller business option as well, both within the context of the service provision and the sustainable supply chains. So what does this actually mean we're trying to work with businesses on? Essentially, we work with businesses to look at their future vision. We work with businesses to look at that blueprint of where they want to go and what that story actually means to them. So what this would mean to you in the context of what you can see here, the middle section is our business model blueprint, and that's the area that we focus mostly on with our businesses. And we do have a range of other tools and frameworks that we use, but this essentially is the core of you considering how you're going to work with your customers and with your suppliers to develop that sustainability angle. It's enabling you to create that future vision about your company, about your relationships with your customers and your suppliers, and it brings that together with the focus on the outputs. So in real brief, I'll just talk you through some of the key elements here. The value creation with customers is particularly important, and this is where you're looking at what the value is that your product brings, and that's the point at which you're able to reflect back and think about what that means therefore to your suppliers. So what value are you getting out of what your suppliers are providing? And that's where that sustainability angle comes from, because part of what we encourage you to do as a business is to look at what's really important, what's fundamentally important to your customers. What is it about their business that you are supporting? And of course, sustainability, as Mark said, will be a really important key element of that, no matter where in the supply chain you are. This model also enables you to look at the value capture process. Again, very important, not just in terms of value being revenue, but value in terms of all of those metrics that both Denise and Mark have spoken about this morning, capturing the value of what you are offering, both in terms of reduction, enhancement, future development, and innovation. So it's a model that brings all of these items together, enables you to articulate it into one overall value proposition. And as part of that, we also work with you. You can see the wheel on the right there. What that does is that helps you to think about how you articulate that, how you tell the story, how you make that something that is human and approachable and interesting, both to your customers, but also to your suppliers. Oh, there we go. It's working. Fantastic. So you did just see a snapshot there. Obviously, we've been working on this for a number of years, linked back to the Centre of Excellence at Aston University. We've got a whole range of tools and templates that we can draw on to support businesses to develop their services approach, to innovate their business model. And this means that no matter where you might be on a services-led journey, no matter where you might be in considering how you can implement a sustainable strategy with your customers and your suppliers, we've got tools there that are going to help you both to do that thinking and to go through to implementation. We've got lots of great examples, and I have spent quite a lot of time this week thinking about which examples would be most useful for you guys today to help understand how the kind of changes might be made. There's 3 on here initially. Domino is a healthcare company that essentially provides health monitoring systems and monitors the output of those and uses that for reporting back into the health service. Very interesting story. You can access the information on that case study on our website, as you can all of those. Cool Mill over there on the right, a fascinating story about a man essentially who's on a mission to feed the world, which sounds like a grand claim, but I think if you're going to be bold, grand claims really can help focus your mind. And the one we have in the middle is Alpha Drive, which I'll be talking to you about right now. So Alpha Drive is a Midlands-based business, and essentially they have a couple of arms to their business, but the one in particular they wanted to talk to us about was the one that was redesigning and refurbishing shredders. So you can see there we are talking about significant pieces of machinery here, very large scale industrial pieces of machinery. And the reason they came to us was that they had that big vision, they had those grand ideas. They knew they were already operating at a certain level, but they wanted to be able to roll that out further. They wanted to be able to have wider impact, both in terms of what they were doing with their customers, but also how they could take their suppliers on that journey as well. Because I got those different bits of the businesses, they were struggling, I beg your pardon, they were struggling to articulate what that value proposition was. And they wanted some help to clarify that and define it better so that they could communicate that really well with their customers and their suppliers, and therefore take everybody on that similar journey. So we used the business model that I showed you through earlier, and we focused on those 4 key areas to help them move through that thinking process. Starting with that value creation with the customers, looking at what segments they were focusing on, thinking about what pains they were addressing within the business, and in particular thinking about what that meant for their customers in terms of sustainability and longer term impact on their business. Thinking about what kind of gains their product was offering, and then thinking about the kind of conditions and risks that they would be moving into if they chose to ramp up their services offering. The services enabling system in particular, you can see there's an element there about suppliers, and this is where they were focusing down on those suppliers that really were at the kind of forefront of what they needed to impact, that underpinned what they're doing from the point of view of their suppliers. So what are their steel suppliers doing? What are their screw suppliers doing? What are their local authorities looking for? What are their wider stakeholders looking for? And what did that mean to them in terms of their overall business proposition, value proposition, and what that meant to their business model? And then ultimately the value capture process. How are they going to be remunerated for this? Of course, very important. Ultimately, we all want to stay in business. We all want to have successful businesses that continue long into the future. But what else is there that they need to be capturing and talking about when they're talking to potential customers and interesting their suppliers in? And then overarching all of that, what does that mean in terms of the competitive landscape? How do we measure up? What are other people doing? Is this going to give us opportunities? Where are those opportunities in relation to our overall value proposition related to sustainability? Because ultimately, and bringing us back to this initial graphic that we mentioned right at the very beginning, it's very important to have that sustainability strategy. It does sit quite rightly, as Mark was saying, alongside all of those key business strategies, but it has to fit within the operations of a business. It has to be subsumed within the operations of a business, the overall business model, in order to make sure that it adds value and you are able to continue to deliver it longer term, which is why we've brought these three key elements together: the understanding, the leadership and the governance, the strategy in terms of your procurement and how you're going to plan and deliver that, and then the business model that's going to provide you with the resilience and the value that will enable you to roll it out even further. So I think that's the end of my presentation, isn't it, Ian?
Yes,
so
it is, Paula.
over to you now.
Perfect timing. And Christina, if I can take control of the slides again, please, I think I should be able to move this forward. Thank you, Christina. Right, I'd like to invite delegates now to use the Q&A function on our Zoom call today to pose questions, perhaps to Denise, on the sustainability and environmental elements of supply chains, anything on procurement and supply chains that Mark can help with, and in particular, how can Paula perhaps guide you in the use of maybe value propositions around about new business models that will help you achieve these sustainable supply chains. So I'll pick up perhaps just maybe one question to start with for you, Denise, is how do you know how the customer and the company will know about scope 3 and the carbon element that Mark talked about? Is there something you can help guide us there?
Yeah, so basically that comes back to how we're approaching businesses in that 4-step model and assessing where they're at now. So it's taking it back to looking at where you are on that staircase and having a look at what the business is already doing. And then the scope 3 part of it is obviously doing the carbon emissions calculation. So you've got your scopes 1 and 2, and then your scope 3, which largely, as Mark said, deals with your supply chains. But it comes back to that initial discovery and looking at your strategy and taking that review approach. So very much taking a strategic approach to it, but not being daunted by it, because scope 3 can feel, when you're looking at scope 3 emissions in particular, can feel really daunting doing that. And so companies are like, oh, you know, this is all kind of coming at me a little bit too much and a little bit too fast, and where do I begin? So just start by taking a review of your business. And the way we approach it, we do discovery days, and we have creative sessions as well. We've got a crazy jam session, which just really drills down into your business and looks at what's important and where you are.
Okay, thanks, Denise. We've got one question for Mark from Johan Diaz, and it's Mark. So many procurement teams are just used to reduce cost of purchased goods and services and seem to be incentivized on the amount of savings they bring. How can we educate organizations to improve this limiting factor?
I think that's a really good question, and ultimately get what you measure. And people traditionally see purchasing and procurement as being just that organisation that saves me money. And very often it's, I've got this, now place me an order. Can you knock me a few quid off? If you start to look at, well, how do you understand supply chain risk? How do you understand how sustainable is your supply chain? How efficiently and effectively are we buying things? How are we impacting enabling growth in the organisation? How are we improving productivity in the organisation? All of those are the key fundamentals of what a procurement function is all about. So I think all of that comes down to stakeholder management and having the right measures and expectations in place of a procurement team. It's not an easy journey. Nobody's pretending that, but I go back to what I said. It's about collaboration and stakeholder management. What I will say, just to add on that, when I was at Rolls-Royce, I used to get told internally, "No, I'm your customer." I hated that. No, we're all stakeholders. You get the same paycheck from that same company as what I do. You're a stakeholder. I'm not your customer. And tells you everything about how actually the organisation is viewed and why there's sometimes the function is subservient to other stakeholders in the business.
Yeah, that's a fabulous question, Johan, and thanks for that response, Mark. That was really appropriate. I believe Paul has got a question for you, Mark, as well.
Mark, so this comes from a company I was speaking to yesterday who said they wouldn't be able to make it. If you said there are 3 initial steps in terms of, looking at that procurement issue, what would your advice be?
I'll go back to something somebody said. Where am I today? Where am I going tomorrow? And how the hell am I going to get there? What's important to you as an organisation? Those values. How are you aligning with the business needs, and how then do you translate that into your supply chain? They're the key bits.
Absolutely. Yeah, that values piece is so important.
Can I just give an example, which I think is really, I went to a session a couple of weeks ago, and there's some great people there doing some fantastic things in delivering solutions to sustainability issues, particularly around the carbon reduction. And it was brilliant. Fantastic solutions, drones and all these types of things. And that's one simple question. You're delivering a sustainable solution, but are you delivering a sustainable product? And when I got told that, well, no, not really, because we are sending something in from China because we can get it cheaper and quicker. And instantly he devalued the brand of his business within 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's a very important one, Mark, to look out for. And I'm conscious of timing, so I just like to respond to Michael's question, and the recording will be available, Michael. That will go out to all delegates that have registered for the session. Christina will look after you there. And it's really just my job to close out to thank Denise, Mark and Paula for their valuable contributions this morning, and also to all the delegates that have registered from so many different countries. So we have left some details in the chat function. The slides will be available on demand at a later time. And I just like to close by thanking everyone for the time. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.